Καλημέρα σας. Να σας ζητήσω να ξεκινήσουμε σιγά σιγά με τον κύριο Larok. Arthur, it's all Greek to you, but I'm going to switch in English so we can start our conversation. So we're here discussing today empowerment, vulnerability, the newly emerging global challenges at the time of the Great Transition, as this year's forum is themed. And of course, amid all this, we're going to focus on ActionAid's work in so many levels. Thank you, Arthur, for joining us.
Thank you very much. It's an honor.
And if it's okay with you, I would like us to start from a personal note, given the fact that your own personal story is a journey towards empowerment. And I don't know how many things you would like to share with us today. But I think it's quite inspiring to hear you talk about the environment where you grew up. I know that you were born in Uganda. I know that you have faced challenges that many of us cannot even perceive. You have been displaced as a child. So I would like you to share with us as many things as you would like. And I'm genuinely curious to find out which were the pillars of your own empowerment, because today you're joining us here in Delphi as the head of a global organization.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. It's indeed an honor to be here. And lots happen to people from childhood, but history is there for us to learn from, but also move into the future. So yes, indeed, I was born in northern Uganda in a small village in a district called Gulu, where there's been a lot of conflict. So I grew up in conflict, but brought up by two teachers. My parents were teachers, and my dad is still alive, 81 years, and my mom is 78 years. And being teachers, and when I grew up in the 80s, it was not the easiest of circumstances. So there was conflict, but also teachers are not the most rewarded in our society. And in the 80s, of course, there was this austerity measures by the World Bank, so the structural adjustment programs, where really there were caps on how much teachers earn and how much governments can recruit. So it was a tough time. So we had to balance between being in school, but also practicing agriculture. So I went to a small Italian missionary-founded school in my primary level. And the good thing about that school was that you didn't have to have money, because it was a boarding school, so my parents used to also keep cows, do agriculture, so they could pay my school fees using goods, not necessarily money. But it was tough, but again, it built, I think, the foundation of who I am today, because that Italian missionary school made me understand how important it is to connect, around the world in terms of solidarity. So when I completed my school, I never ever thought I would be heading an organization like ActionAid, but I did join ActionAid in 2012. And for me, it was an important moment, because I realized through ActionAid that there indeed is a global community that cares about others. So it was the first time in my life that I began to realize that what I went through in childhood, in conflict, some days, it was a miracle sometimes, to just live and be alive the following day. It was only when I joined ActionAid that I realized that there is a global community that cares about people, because through investments, including from the Greek people, through child sponsorship for people to go to school, maybe there are some sponsors here as well, opportunity is provided, for people to have a fighting chance. So to rise through ActionAid and become the Secretary General only after 10 years, 10 or 11 years in the organization, in itself is a remarkable story, not about me, but about the organization. I do not think I would have had this chance in another context, but ActionAid does provide space for empowerment, and I'm an example of that, and the story that I tell today is partly because of this opportunity that ActionAid provided. So key for me to overcome this difficult childhood is education, exposure, and of course connecting globally. I think without that, I wouldn't have made it. So that's a bit of my story.
Thank you for sharing that with us. And is it safe to assume that you would wish that an organization like ActionAid, the way you put it, connecting people and putting people at the center of its efforts, that you would wish something like that would be, active during your childhood, your times?
Definitely. Definitely. So ActionAid has been operating around the world since '72. I think in Greece, maybe we came in 1998. And so when I became the country director of ActionAid, we had sponsors from all over the world, including Greek people. So, but where I grew up was in conflict, and sometimes it's not easy to trace children and to invest in those communities that are full-time moving. So when I was displaced, I think an important connection that ActionAid sponsors have is with children. And so children need to write their stories, they need to send images, and so when you grow up in conflict, it's not easy to be accountable.
Right.
Yeah, so I did not directly benefit as an individual, this solidarity around the world. But when I joined ActionAid, I did see how meaningful that is. And to be very honest, in a leadership position in ActionAid Uganda, I made sure that we had creative ways of reaching the most disadvantaged, including those in conflict. Because sometimes it's easy to make decisions and play safe, but I think with ambition, you are able actually to reach. So I think we expanded our programs in Uganda.
Even to reach regions of conflict.
Exactly. It's really about ambition and creativity. So I think by the time I left ActionAid Uganda, I think support from the, thousands and thousands of Greek people who sponsor children had also reached my area where I come from. So I'm very proud about that. And not only that, I think the real currency that ActionAid has is what I think is solidarity. Solidarity is our currency, that we exist in a world where we need to feel each other's pains. So when I see what is happening in Gaza, when I see what is happening in Ukraine, I should feel their pain. Because if I don't feel their pain, I'm detached from the reality. And because of this, I think Ugandans in their own simple ways, including myself, learning from what ActionAid does in terms of solidarity, some 15 years ago, I did contribute myself to the Ebola crisis in West Africa, because I know how much little contributions can make a big difference in people's lives. So that, I think, is the opportunity that ActionAid creates.
I want us to discuss the challenges, the global challenges of our time of transition, but since you're mentioning the small things that can make a difference, I always wonder when I have the chance to discuss with people leading or participating in organizations like ActionAid, whether there comes a time that it's literally exhausting to feel that no matter how much you do, no matter how many years you try, there's always going to be injustice, inequality, not enough money, not enough solidarity, conflict, pain, death, extreme poverty. So how do you feel about that?
Yeah, no, it's true. The crisis we face today, it's very easy to simply give up and not try, and you feel like there's no impact I can create. But I'm always inspired by a remarkable quote from Mahatma Gandhi, who is an Indian but also lived in South Africa, where I live now too. He says that, the quote is something like, you may never know the results that come out of your actions, but if you do nothing, there will be no result. So I think that we as a human race might not have the capability to understand the impact and influence we have over people, but many people might be watching me now. I might never know them, but you never know what actions they take. So when you can meaningfully contribute and make a difference, do that, even if you might never know the result. I think the potent point from this quotation is that do something positive, and you never know how it impacts other people. And I mean, you as a journalist, a very successful journalist, you never know people who watch you. people who are inspired by you, people who just take actions on the young people who just take actions by listening to you. You might never know that. But if you are not on stage, we would never be inspired. So I think that's the way to give hope and believe that you're making a difference. Whatever positive action you take each and every day will impact the world in ways that we might not be able to measure. That's the hope.
Thank you. Now, you know, let's discuss a bit about perceptions and stereotypes. For most people, there is a common perception that those born in African countries or certain Asian countries come from a less privileged environment. They're given less opportunities, less access. But things are changing nowadays. We have new challenges. For example, I'm not sure whether we all agree here, but I believe that it wouldn't be wrong to consider as part of a vulnerable population farmers in central Greece, for example, farmers in Thessaly, in the flood-stricken district of prefecture of Thessaly. So I would like to ask you whether you share this point of view that we give new meanings to perceptions about challenges and privilege and accessibility, and whether this has repositioned ActionAid's priorities.
Absolutely. So global giving and solidarity, like I said, is the core of what ActionAid does. But the example you have given about farmers in central Greece is typically what many in the global south are facing, many farmers in the global south. I said earlier that I grew up in a farming community. I know what happened when I was growing up in the 80s and 90s. The situation is different with regards to climate now. And I think the climate crisis that is looming large each and every day is something that can unite the global community to do something. Because these farmers you have talked about in central Greece might have little contribution they have made to the disaster. Because as we know, the injustice that ActionAid talks about in the climate work is precisely because those who are least responsible are most affected by the
Greece is
crisis.
accountable for 0.2 of the global
0.2.
emissions.
Uganda might be 0.00 something. The whole of Africa is 4% in the world. And the disasters that we see, whether in Southern Africa, in Ethiopia with drought and all of that, is a reflection that there are drivers. And ActionAid has recently released a study last year about the two major drivers of the climate crisis, industrial agriculture and fossil fuel extraction, and really making the case that we can transition away from this reality. So over and above the global giving that ActionAid has been known for and child sponsorship that ActionAid Greece has been known for, I think it's building the agency of people to connect all over the world to push back on these injustices that are really benefiting a few and affecting millions and millions. So I think that ActionAid is now playing an important global connection role to enable us access different decision makers. I wouldn't have come here if it was not for ActionAid Greece, but it's been overwhelming to just speak to people, to learn from others. And so that's the opportunity that an organization like this gives. And it's made possible because people are contributing to ActionAid Greece. And so if you have sponsors around Greece, and you want to make a difference, there are organizations you can invest in. So climate is a big, big issue we do have, and relentlessly we will work for whatever we can achieve. The issue about gender inequality is a big, big crisis. The UN suggests that on the current level of investment, it will take us 300 years to achieve gender equality. Right. This is impossible to believe in this level of technological advancement and wealth that has been created in this last century, that we would have a huge fraction of the population not contributing meaningfully to transformation. So gender and resisting patriarchy and overcoming patriarchy is central to our work. And finally, economic justice is very crucial because we are in a system that makes us invest less in public services, gender-responsive public services. So that system must be transformed if we are to unleash opportunity for shared prosperity around the world.
And there's, of course, your humanitarian work, but I'm intrigued, and I was wondering whether you want to share with all the people here and those watching us. The story that you were discussing earlier about how such a tiny thing, a tiny initiative can actually change the culture of a community when it comes to patriarchate and the gender inequality. Would you like to share?
Absolutely. This is a very inspiring story from ActionAid. It's a simple tool that we developed called Times Use Diary. And the Times Use Diary is enabling women and society to understand how much women work and never recognized. So it's a simple tool that simply says, what time do you wake up? 5 a.m. And what time do you go to sleep? Midnight. What do you do in between that time? And so in one of the urban, peri-urban communities that ActionAid works in, a woman was part of ActionAid's training, was just filling in these forms, and left it on the bed of the husband, so that the husband could see. And the first day he looked at it, he didn't pay attention. And then the following day, the woman put it on the radio.
She didn't give up.
She didn't give up on the radio. And so all of a sudden, then he said, but why am I being bothered by this, my wife? And then he realized that the woman works so much. And he asked her, is this what you do every day? So I am living with you, but I'm not conscious about what you are going through.
Because he goes to work.
Yeah, he goes to work and then comes back, finds food is ready, children have bathed, everybody, is set. You never realize, so it's like unpaid care work. So what this gentleman did was he started to share the responsibility at home. He went to fetch water, he washed and cleaned the children, and then the community started to realize, like, what's wrong with this guy? Why is he behaving this way? And then slowly by slowly, other women and other men realized that the burden of care should not just be taken by women, but we should share that. First, we should recognize it as important, we should value it, but most importantly, we should redistribute it. And that community took those steps. And how did they do it? Through a simple tool of what time you wake up and what time you sleep.
I'm afraid that this particular tool would be very useful in Greece as well. Perhaps we should consider it. Okay, we only have 10 seconds, so the floor is yours, of course. A message that you would like to send out there.
No, thank you. Thank you very much, first, for the opportunity, but no hope lost. The world is in a mess, but through small contributions you make through organizations like ActionAid, we can make a difference elsewhere around the world. So I'm really delighted for the opportunity to speak to you all, and thanks for coming.
Thank you so much. Thank you.